Hello everyone, welcome back to Perception Paradox. My name is Zivile and I'm your host. And today is the final episode in the Post-Tech Barbecue series, the conference which is happening in Copenhagen every year. And this year it happened end of August. And today I'm talking with Mariama Boumanjal, who manages the founder funds and programs at Google for startups across EMEA and has worked everywhere from Dublin to San Francisco. She believes diversity isn't just nice to have. It's a competitive advantage that drives better business outcomes. So we are diving into how AI is reshaping startups, what Google actually looks for in founders, and why supporting underrepresented founders is smart business. So if you ever wondered how to catch Google's attention or build more impactful companies, this conversation is packed with insights. Let's dive in. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox, Tech Barbecue Podcast edition. And today I have Mariama, a wonderful woman who has been very active in the startup ecosystem, has a very inclusive and diverse approach towards entrepreneurship, communities. And I guess we're going to talk today with you about what brings you to Tech Barbecue and what kind of big missions you are doing right now when it comes to empowering entrepreneurship and founders' journey.
Absolutely.
Because that's something we need in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe I'll start a little bit with a quick intro of myself, just to give you like my background.
Perfect.
So I'm Mariama. I was born and raised in Germany to Moroccan parents. So I think this is where my first interaction starts with diversity and as well an innovative approach or a different approach. And I think, growing up in Germany in a very homogeneous society, at least like, in the part where I grew up in, it just makes you realize like, difference was always seen as almost like a weakness. Like, oh yeah, you're not German. You're German with immigration background because, you do not look German. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I always realized like, and I was very fortunate because of my upbringing and my parents and my environment that I was told I'm something special because having that immigration background, having that different culture approach, just makes me special because I think differently and I have come from different backgrounds. And this is where as well, like, when you grow up, you think like, oh, I don't look like the others. Like, I'm not blonde and I don't have blue eyes. And I mean, like, I'm the only one with black hair, or I'm a little bit darker. But then you realize actually that is your superpower because while all the others all look the same, I look different. So people will remember me and people will know that I was there and present. And this is where I look at it as well, the way I work with founders. And I think, sometimes founders, especially like diverse founders from underrepresented group, like women founders or black founders, I think like they always think like, oh, it's my weakness. Like I don't get access to funding because I'm a woman. So let me get, I don't know, a white male co-founder who, hopefully can help me to raise capital. And sometimes I'd be like, well, you know what you think stops you from becoming the best possible founder or like building the best possible company should be a superpower. Mm-hmm. So that's why I work a lot with underrepresented founders because I just feel like they are so different. And I mean, there's so much research as well where like, majority of the founders, for example, in the UK who actually funded a unicorn startup, they all have immigration background, like 70% of them. Like you have somebody like from Revolut, like, he wasn't British. And I think the same as well in the US. You do have a lot of the founders who actually, are not necessarily American, or at least they have this immigration background. And I find it fascinating because it resonates so much with my own story where I can really feel like I feel absolutely privileged because I grew up between two cultures. I do have completely two different mindset. Like I always say to people, like my software is German because I'm very much on time. I'm direct and I'm efficient. But my hardware is Moroccan. I think, that's where I'm very proud of that I have this combination of the two.
That is so beautiful and inspiring. And talking about your professional career, right? Right now you find yourself working with Google for startups. How did you find yourself in entrepreneurship from the first note?
I mean, honestly, so I left Germany very early after high school and then I studied in the UK. And then in the UK, I first pursued a career in investment banking. Mm-hmm. But then I realized very much like, oh no, this is not the right career for me. And it's not like the skills that I had, I think, or that I wanted to further develop weren't really nurtured there. So I really randomly, very randomly, or a Google advertising for a job role. And it was a mix of sales, marketing, and it kind of like really spoke to me because I was like, oh my God, these are the skills that I have. And like, this could be a good fit. So it was the shortest application I've ever submitted because you literally submit your CV and then they tell you, thank you, you will never hear from us because we get millions of CVs every day. So I totally forgotten about it. And then 3 weeks later, I got a call from Emma from Dublin. And she asked me if I'm still interested in the role. And yeah, I mean, long story short, here I am almost 11 years later. Wow. So when I first joined Google, I joined in a large customer sales organization. So I was looking after emerging markets, large multinationals, and I was specializing on mobile apps. And back in the time, we had universal app campaigns, and they were actually the first Google Ads product that was AI. So before you would have to optimize campaigns, manually, but like universal app campaigns would actually perform so much better because they're using AI. So anyways, I've done that for the first 3-4 years. And we have Google for Startups campuses, physical spaces. We have it in Madrid, in London, in Tel Aviv, in Warsaw, in Brazil, in Japan, Korea. And I think it goes back to the story of the Sergey and Larry, because I mean, like when they started a business, 2 PhD students from Stanford came up to make the, information universal, accessible to everyone, but like, they didn't know how to run a company. They didn't know how to monetize because the product, let's be honest, is for free. But they very early on got themselves some very strong and intelligent people on board who then kind of like navigate them and help them to create the alphabet company that it is nowadays. And I think so when I heard about this Google for Startups team and what they basically do. The mission is to leverage the playing field for founders around the world by providing them with the best of Google. And when we look at the best of Google, it's really like our products, access to our products, access to our people. Mm-hmm. We do hire some of the smartest people in the world. And then as well, access to our best practices. And this goes back to what I say was Larry and Sergey, is like they didn't have a physical space. That's why we started physical spaces for early stage founders, because being part of a community and being somewhere where you feel like, oh my God, I can kind of like innovate and try and fail, but I feel safe in this environment. And then as well, like, we provide founders with like a series of workshops. So I really feel like we can equip them with like go-to-market strategies, sales, but as well leadership and like, internal processes like objective and key results. So yeah, so basically what we do is each campus would always bring an army of Googlers from around the world who qualify in terms of like what are the startup needs for 2 weeks to a physical space. So I had my first interaction in 2017 and I spent 2 weeks in Madrid, in Campus Madrid with Spanish entrepreneurs. And, back in the time I was an app specialist. So I was really helping them like, to have a really good app user experience, but then as well, like with a marketing strategy, with as well, like the tracking, the conversion tracking and so on. And then after I'd done that, I was like, no way, I cannot go back to like multinationals. Like that's where I found my passion and my purpose. Wow. And I really like, took me 4 years to then eventually get the job that I have today. But I was blown away by what these founders are building. And what I find really impressive is, you get to meet founders who are really in it to solve a problem. I think majority of the founders have all been, had career at Goldman Sachs, had career at McKinsey's, like, at some of the top-notch, biggest corporates. And they literally give it up. Give a lot up. I mean, it's a really good salary, the prestige, the career to solve a problem that they think needs to be solved. And they use technology to do this at scale. And this is, for me, super impressive to be able to work with these founders day in, day out.
Super inspiring. And you mentioned a lot about the diversity and inclusion, and we do have nowadays a lot of funds approaching focused on underrepresented groups, let's say only female founder-focused funds, etc. What are your views on such initiatives focused on one underrepresented group?
Yeah.
And do you think that's a way to solve our diversity problem?
I mean, throughout the years, I had the privilege over the last 7-8 years to work directly with founders. And when I first joined the team in London, I remember the first interaction that I had with founders were with a cohort, predominantly white male who graduated from Oxford or Imperial. And they're very entitled. Some of them had not even an MVP, and they're already raised like, millions of dollars. Yeah. And then I came across and I was like, okay, these are not the founders that I want to support and work for and work with because, they are like the sense of entitlement. And so this is where I actually, from day in, day out, I was working with underrepresented founders or I was working with founders for an underdeveloped ecosystem where I just feel like, you can really tell the difference when you give them access, when you support them. It's just like, you see how fast and quick they can grow when you actually give them the same resources that like, their typical white male entitled founder will get. And I mean, even today, when you say to somebody, close your eyes and picture a successful founder, you immediately picture a white male engineer from Stanford. And I think, this is where I do believe when you do like these targeted efforts to, really promote and support specific groups, that they can help. But at the same time, let's be honest, if you are a founder, a female founder, you just want to be a founder.
Yes.
You don't want to be reduced to your gender. And same with like Black founders. Like, why does it make a difference that I'm Black? Like, why can I not just be a founder? And I mean, now we have so many incredible examples of Black founders who have successful businesses, who scaled, who hired so many people and created so many jobs and economic opportunity. And this is where ideally, we should be operating in a startup ecosystem where you're a founder. It doesn't matter which race, gender, or sexuality, immigration status, so you're a founder. But I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think these programs do help to emphasize at least, and like showcase that there are some incredible female founders out there.
And create the awareness perhaps as well, that we're pointing them out in front.
Exactly.
And now, since you've been working with the founders so hands-on, and what you're doing with Google for startups, it's incremental and very essential work in the ecosystem. What have you noticed in the recent couple of years when it comes to the founding teams and perhaps overall work towards their MVP? Because we've got a lot of more than ever before available Gen AI tools that helps really to build fast, iterate fast, fail fast, but at the same time, it kind of, in some cases, it creates a bit of misconception about, so what is a product and what is simply the coding with the app and not a proper deep tech solution that would be sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think Demis, our CEO of DeepMind, said it very well. AI is the fastest growing technology. Like, it took the internet 10 years. It took mobile like a few years. But AI, like, literally is already out there. And within 2 years, we're all going to have our personalized AI agent. So I think when you look at the startups, you look at some of the startups that, for example, I worked with 6 years ago, they already were developing their own AI solutions. So, two, for example, in legal tech is Definely and Robin AI. Both lawyers, they were both tired of doing the same contracting and like wasting so much time on repetitive work that they both came up with AI tools that will help lawyers to just do the work so much faster and remove the repetition of the work and made it more inclusive and obviously cheaper and more accessible. These are already founders that were already ahead of the AI boom because they were like, hey, you know what? We're using technology to fill in with all the data so it can learn and can actually help create these contracts without me having to spend 20 hours to do it manually. So that's one thing. And then you see a lot of founders who have tech product and services, but they use AI in a different sense, like some built on ChatGPT, some built on Gemini. So they are not an AI product itself, but I think in order to globally be able to continue to compete, you need to implement AI solutions, existing AI solutions, into your workflow processes and so on. But I mean, as well, it makes it so much easier now for a founder to start off a business. Like, you can literally ask AI tools to create your website. You can literally build it. I mean, like, Lovable is one of the examples of so I think this is where, you just need to be very, very quick to kind of like deploy and educate yourself on these AI solutions.
Absolutely, and strategic as well. And mainly you've been working with EMEA markets right now.
My focus is on like Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
What is your observation? What are the key characteristics of a founder in EMEA country?
I mean, as I said, most of the founders that I work with are very well educated and really like, I guess you would define it as successful career, right? And I think, what they have in common is they are really in it to solve for a problem. You do have a founder where I feel like they chose the founder life because of the lifestyle. And then you really see those who like hustle and literally like try to make it work and like, grow their company and raise capital and, and really solve that problem. And they think they are well equipped because they come either from the industry or know the background, or it is sometimes even a personal issue. And you see that a lot with Women's Health, for example. Majority of the women's health companies that have been funded was because, a woman was like, hey, how comes like I have endometriosis? So I'm not the only woman who has endometriosis. So you starting a business to be like, let me help all the million women out there to kind of like not necessarily have to go through the same pain or kind of like prevent it and so on. But like, so, you see a lot of resilience. And I think this, if you don't have resilience, it means startup life, founder life is today you can have $50 on your account, tomorrow you can have 50,000. So, constantly have to pivot and adopt. There were so many amazing travel tech companies and COVID hit. So you see those who quickly adopted or those who quickly one of the companies that I worked with is actually Ticketo. Ticketo was a ticketing company startup that focusing, it was kind of like integrated into your WhatsApp. And like, let's say you're in Turkey and you want to go to the museum, so you can order immediately and pay immediately within WhatsApp, your tickets. And then, COVID hit. And she was about to go 10x. But she used that time to literally focus on product development, make meaningful partnerships, So, and now I think she just recently closed her Series A and she was acquired. So, cool. Yeah, so you really see those, who take the time to be like, I'm not going to let that stop me from what I'm trying to achieve here. Yeah, resilience is definitely, and curiosity. I mean, if you're not curious to try out new things and to do it in a different way, then why are you building a startup?
That's a very good question. Sometimes I see we've got the trend that it's became very trendy to become a founder, and it's a lot about validation and ego.
You see some of the founders where I'd be like, they're on every single conference and every single event, and I'm like, when exactly do you build your business? Like now at this point as well, I've worked with founders 5 years ago, and when I see them today, I'd be like, where's the progress? Yeah. And then for me, it says a lot if you haven't done any progress. I mean, that's the thing with startups, right? It goes so fast. And that's where you really start to identify and differentiate between serious entrepreneurs and those who want to be entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying necessarily, yes, they identified a big problem. They are trying to use technology to solve it but I think they're not in it to really
So with the current changing landscape, technology escalating and all the different tools, also we do have a lot of different accelerators, initiatives for founders across the globe up and bringing. Where do you think with your program, Google for Startups, you're standing out in the crowd, and how did you adjust to the changing market?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Look, at the end of the day, what differentiates us, and that's we had to remind ourselves as well, is that we're Google. So there is, of course, AWS, there is Meta, they all do accelerators, all the big banks, Goldman's doing as well an incubator, Morgan Stanley has their program. First of all, we partner with most of them together. But I think what really differentiates us is we bring the Google magic. And this is where we have some of the world's best AI technology. And teaching founders how to build on it and how to optimize on it, that's a superpower. And then again, the mentorship piece, you get to have access to some of the most intelligent people. And it's not just necessarily AI developers, but as well, we're talking about recruitment. We're talking about, performance. We're talking about sales. We're talking about go-to-market. We're talking about expansion. We're talking about so much more. So I feel I think, we as Google for Startup have done a really great job in just kind of focusing on the value that we can most add to startups. Because if they are successful, we're successful. And that's where we're focusing on.
Mariama, time flies, and I feel we just started scratching the surface, but perhaps we're going to leave going more in depth for our next meeting.
Absolutely.
But I have a tradition on the podcast that I invite my guests to leave the audience with a question to ponder about life, entrepreneurship, or something you've been trying to answer yourself. Maybe there is a question you would like to leave our audience who was here with us today to ponder on.
I think, you know what, every time when you purchase something or when you're about to do something or when you're about to travel somewhere, think about these local businesses that you can support. And I think this is where you can leave a little bit more impact on this world. And I think sometimes, and I'm guilty myself, it's harder to kind of think about it. But I think, at this point, instead of going to the traditional McDonald's, think of the local that you can actually support and the business owners. Because I think, what I've learned through the work that I'm doing is business owners, they really are challenged and have difficulties. And I think we can do so much more in supporting them. And I think, as well, there are so many problems that still need to be solved. And think about a way how we can contribute to it.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today at Tech Barbecue. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Mariama from Google.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, likewise. Thank you.